How's it going, everybody? It's Warren. Welcome back to the Cosmic Wonder, and congratulations, Marvel fans. We did it. We survived a whole year and a half without any new Marvel shows or movies. And now we are finally in Phase 4. And Phase 4 got started off with a 2-episode premiere of the brand new Wandavision Disney Plus series from Marvel Studios. Now, a lot happened within these 2 episodes, including what I believe to be the reveal of not 1, not 2, but 3 villains for the Wandavision series. Villains that I believe can kind of explain what exactly is going on in this very weird television show. So I'll break down what I think is happening within the Wandavision series and why these villains want Wanda. When the series starts, we can see that Vision is all of a sudden alive, and him and Wanda are recently married. They drive into their new town to their new home. There's a lot of comedy involved in the first scenes and a lot of references to old sitcoms, including Bewitched and The Dick Van Dyke Show. Vision disguises himself as a human and then heads off to work. Then immediately, Agnes comes to the door. Now, Agnes is kind of a mysterious character at this point. She invites herself into Wanda's house and asks her a ton of questions. Now, I believe this to be Agatha Harkness, a witch from the Salem witch trials who has a heavy connection to Wanda in the comics. Now, Agatha has been both good and bad. She's been a mentor to Wanda in the comics, but she could be a villain in this show. Based off of what I've seen in the first 3 episodes, I'm not 100% sure, so I'm not going to classify her as one of the 3 villains. But either way, she knows who Wanda is. Wanda and Vision have a bit of a misunderstanding about an important date marked on the calendar. Wanda believes it to be her anniversary with Vision, when in reality, Vision's boss, Mr. Hart, is coming over for dinner. Meanwhile, Wanda prepares for a romantic night. Mr. and Mrs. Hart come over and we hear a Sokovia reference, where Wanda is from, which I believe is going to be a heavy factor moving forward in the WandaVision series. Wanda prepares dinner, and up until this point, everything seemed kind of normal, until Mr. Hart starts choking. The show then becomes a little bit of a horror show and a very creepy scene that takes place. Mr. Hart is choking and nobody is helping him. In fact, his wife just sits there and says, "Stop it." But it's almost like she's saying "stop it" to Wanda and not her husband. Eventually, Wanda tells Vision to help him, and Vision saves his life. And then, in a very weird turn of events, they act like nothing has happened, and they just leave. Now, there are some major and important things that you need to note about what happens during these scenes. One is that when Wanda is cooking dinner, she invites Agnes over for help. Agnes, at that point, kind of refuses to leave. Wanda tries very hard to get her to go without success until finally getting her to leave. But she ends up coming back through the front door. It seems like she can't leave Wanda and Vision alone. Another important thing to note that ties into what I believe to be the main villain of not only this series, but Phase 4 and Phase 5 of the MCU, is that Mr. and Mrs. Hart start asking Wanda and Vision some questions about when they got married, where they moved from, but specifically, why they don't have any kids. Wanda and Vision not having any kids is going to be a main factor of the main villain, which I believe is revealed in episode 2, so I'll talk about that in just a second. Wanda and Vision can't actually answer these questions. They don't know. They don't know when they got married, they don't know where they moved from, and they don't know their story, which is very odd. And when Mr. and Mrs. Hart leave, Wanda and Vision talk some more about how it is odd that they don't know their anniversary, where they moved from, or what their story is. But then it gets even more strange when we find out that an agent of S.W.O.R.D. is watching them like a TV show on a television. Now, if you're not familiar with what S.W.O.R.D. is, it is the space counterpart to S.H.I.E.L.D. S.W.O.R.D. stands for Sentient World Observation and Response Department, and they seem to be monitoring Wanda and Vision. Now, things start to really pick up in episode 2, where there are references and Easter eggs to 3 villains. The first one is actually spotted in the intro of episode 2, right after the funny bed scene opening. If you pause the show during the intro at 3:27 when Vision is phasing through the floor, you can see that under the floor is a helmet of some sort. Now, originally, a lot of us thought that this was Galactus's helmet. However, this looks a lot more like the Grim Reaper's helmet. This is villain number 1, and what's really interesting about this is that Grim Reaper in the comics is the brother of Wonder Man. And basically what happens in the comics is that Vision's brainwaves came from Wonder Man. So, Grim Reaper views Vision as an abomination that stole a part of his brother. Now, another really interesting thing about Grim Reaper is that at one point in time, he has worked for Hydra and Ultron. And I'll go over that in just a bit when we talk about the Hydra scene in episode 2. As we get into this episode, we see that Wanda and Vision are doing a talent show that is for the children, and this is an ongoing theme. From here, Wanda goes off to the planning committee meeting for the talent show, and Vision goes off to a neighborhood watch meeting. But before Wanda goes out, we see that she finds a helicopter that is in color, red and yellow, and it has the SWORD logo on it. Now, it was revealed in the first episode that SWORD is indeed monitoring her, and we have seen from the trailers that there's a helicopter that looks exactly like this that kind of gets sucked into this magical bubble that is surrounding Westview. So this is that helicopter, and eventually we will see the scene where it gets sucked into this reality. But Wanda is starting to realize that things aren't quite what they seem, and things are getting a little weird. But here is where we get possibly the biggest Easter egg and reveal and hint towards who the villain of this show actually is. During the planning meeting, the character Dottie says, "The devil is in the details, Bev." And then Agnes, again who we believe to be Agatha Harkness, leans over to Wanda and says, "That's not the only place he is." Now, for those of you who have been watching my videos leading up to WandaVision, you know what I'm about to say. This is a reference to Mephisto. Mephisto is the devil of the Marvel Universe. He is the ruler of the Hell Realm, and he has a huge tie-in to Wanda, specifically when it comes to her children, and children are being stressed in this episode, and the House of M story. Remember, Marvel does everything super intentionally, and you're not just going to drop the devil's name and then a one-liner like that from Agatha immediately after without it meaning something. Now, this episode goes on to stress for the children. It stresses children, and then at the end of this episode, Wanda is suddenly pregnant. Now, how exactly is this possible since Vision is a synthezoid? Well, in the comics, Wanda is actually pregnant with the shards of Mephisto's soul. And eventually, after Wanda has her kids, Mephisto wants those shards back. And he ultimately would take them back. Wanda loses her kids. This leads her to eventually go insane. And it leads us up to the House of M storyline where she utters the famous words, "No more mutants." From there, she creates her own reality where her family is the rulers. And I believe that that is what we are working up to here. In fact, we did get a little bit of a House of M vibe, specifically at the end of this episode. When Wanda and Vision find out that they're pregnant, they hear a noise outside. This is where things start to get that horror aspect again and get very creepy. They go outside, and in the street, the beekeeper comes out of the sewer. Wanda gets scared and sees how this could jeopardize her perfect reality, and she says no. And then she alters reality. She changes reality to where that person never existed. He didn't come into the picture after they found out that they're pregnant. Now, this pretty much mirrors the comics where Wanda says, "No more mutants," and then changes reality. In the show, she says, "No," and then changes reality. So we know that a House of M story is kind of taking place within this episode and future episodes. Now, Marvel doesn't exactly copy the entire story from the comics. They take pieces of the story and make their own. So it's not going to be exactly the same, but one thing is for certain, and that is that Mephisto wants Wanda to have kids. However, why that is unclear at this point. But let's not forget that in the Loki trailer, we did see a Mephisto Easter egg. In one scene in the trailer, we can see a stained glass devil. There's no real reason for Marvel to put this in a show or a scene without it meaning something. And Mephisto is too big of a villain to just have for one show, which is why I say not only is he going to be the big villain of this series along with Grim Reaper and Hydra, but he's going to be the villain of the entire Phase 4 and possibly Phase 5, appearing in other shows and then a movie. Now, going back to Hydra, we do have this Hydra scene in this episode, which is a callback to how Wanda got her powers. The Easter egg for Hydra comes in the form of a commercial that is a Strucker Hydra watch. Now, Strucker, if you recall, in Avengers Age of Ultron, is Baron von Strucker, the Hydra scientist who experimented on Wanda and Quicksilver and is responsible for giving them their powers. Through the Mind Stone, of course. But this most likely isn't a simple callback. Hydra most likely has something to do with the WandaVision series. And I believe that this beekeeper that came out of the ground could be a Hydra agent. Somehow, Wanda is locked inside of this bubble reality. We've seen from the trailers that there is clearly some type type of force field that is created by energy protecting the city. And the fact that this person comes from under the ground through a sewer could mean that this was the only way that he could actually get through this energy field, was to go under it. Now, why exactly is this person a beekeeper? That's unclear right now. It could be that he is actually a villain from the Spider-Man comics, the villain Swarm. Now, Swarm's real name is Fritz von Meyer, and he's a German scientist who worked for Adolf Hitler. So they could change his story just a little bit in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to make it to where he's a Hydra scientist. And this could be him that we see in this episode. But at the same time, it could very well be a sword agent who is trying to break into this reality and see what's going on and try to help Wanda. And I always say try and help Wanda and not Wanda and Vision, because I truly believe that Vision is not alive. It's too early to tell, but I don't think he's back from the dead. He could possibly be an illusion, or he could be the product of Mephisto. We'll have to wait for more episodes until we find out what exactly is going on, but those are the 3 villains that I think were revealed in the first 2 episodes of WandaVision. Let me know what you thought about the first 2 episodes of WandaVision in the comments down below, and let me know what you think about these 3 villains being in WandaVision. More breakdowns of the first 2 episodes coming later on this week, so don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the videos. Don't forget to like the video, and for live updates, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.